Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is Evil of Dracula. Now, Evil of Dracula is a Japanese horror film released in 1974, and the film was directed by Michio Yamamoto, and the movie was produced and distributed by Toho, the same company that produced and distributed all the Godzilla films. And this is the third and final film of the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, a series of vampire films that Toho did back in the 70s, and Yamamoto also directed the other two films in this series. Now, I have the Bloodthirsty Trilogy on this Blu-ray set from Arrow Video. Now, this is more of a thematic trilogy. There really is no continuity between any of the three films. Like, you do have some similar plot elements in each film, and actors from one film would play similar characters in another film, but other than that, each film in this series is more or less standalone. Like, each one takes place in its own universe. Now, both this movie and the previous film, Lake of Dracula, take ideas and plot elements from the classic Bram Stoker novel, Dracula. Now, the plot of Evil of Dracula is it's about this school teacher who gets a teaching job at this boarding school for girls. And when he gets there, he discovers that the principal's wife has previously died in a car accident, and the principal actually wants him to be his successor. But soon it's revealed that the school's principal is actually a vampire, and he starts preying on the girls at the school. And the main character and the school's doctor eventually find out about this, and they try to put a stop to this, and that's the basic plotline of Evil of Dracula. Now, this might actually be my favorite of the Bloodthirsty trilogy. It's hard to say because I really enjoyed all three of these films, and I liked each of them for different reasons, but this one might have been my personal favorite, and you got some weird shit in this movie. Like, there's a scene towards the end of this movie. Now, the principal's wife does eventually come back from the dead as a vampire, and there's a scene towards the end where this schoolgirl who has also been turned into a vampire is lying naked on a table, and the principal's wife cuts off her face and then puts it on, and this allows her to take on the form of this girl. There's a really interesting backstory given in the film where you find out hundreds of years ago there was a white Christian who came over to Japan to spread Christianity, and he ended up getting tortured, and this caused him to renounce his faith. And then God punished him by turning him into a blood-sucking demon, and then he attacked this young Japanese girl and turned her into a vampire. That backstory given in the film probably could have been its own movie, but it doesn't really explain how that ties in with the principal of the school. Like, you're not sure if the principal is like some descendant of the vampires that we learn about in the backstory, or if he's possessed by the spirit of that white Christian who turned into a vampire. I do think it's interesting how both this and the previous film had a real emphasis on Christianity, because I know Christianity is not as prevalent in Japan as it is in Western cultures. Now, the principal in this movie, who is basically the Dracula stand-in, he's played by the same actor who played the vampire in the previous film, but I would say he's given more of a human personality in this one. But he's a really good actor. It's Shin something. I know I'm gonna butcher his last name. But he was also in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and I know he's been in a lot of Ultraman stuff. In the movie, there's this really creepy teacher who is sort of the Renfield stand-in, and the actor who plays him was also in a lot of Godzilla movies. Now, the main character is fairly likable, but he does say some questionable things at one point. Like, at one point in the movie, the girls are complaining about how the creepy teacher is watching them as they're playing tennis, and they complain to the main character about it, and the main character says, "Well, can you blame him? You're all so pretty." And I was like, okay, I don't think that's an appropriate thing to say to a bunch of girls who are already weirded out by somebody staring at them. I mean, granted, the movie was made in the 1970s, and Japan is a different culture, but even so, I was like, okay, that's a little weird. Although later on in the film, those same girls do mock the main character for saying that to them, so it seems like the movie is at least aware that what he said to them wasn't really the appropriate response. But yeah, I enjoyed Evil of Dracula. I thought it was a pretty good addition to the series, and I enjoyed the Bloodthirsty trilogy overall. I thought it was a really fun series of vampire films, and if you like Japanese genre cinema, I would definitely recommend checking these movies out. Now, I do have one small gripe. Toho did a series of Dracula-related films in the 70s. How the fuck come there was never a Godzilla vs. Dracula? I mean, come on, that would have been amazing. You could have had the human characters dealing with Dracula in his human form in the first half of the movie, and then in the second half of the movie, Dracula turns into a giant kaiju-sized bat creature, and Godzilla has to fight that. You tell me that wouldn't have been brilliant. I mean, sure, it would have been ridiculous, but no more ridiculous than Godzilla vs. Megalon. But all joking aside, I recommend these movies, and my next review for Horror Month will be on the 1987 classic, The Stepfather. So stay tuned for that review, and bye.